Well, howdy folks. Coffee's still a little hot. The day's starting out to be beautiful. And I'm going to give you guys the results of the 4 rounds of the guessing game. And I'm going to do this for a specific reason because I've noticed in the analytics, these videos have received more thumbs down than any other video that I've done in this channel. I wonder if that speaks to people's impatience and our society as a whole. I'll let you decide. But before I get into the results, I've got everything recorded, got notes written down. But I want to address a couple of things underneath my comment section that I think are from trolls, absolutely, okay? Somebody left a comment saying that Swiss does not graphite their gunpowder. Go to the Swiss website, you can read it for yourselves, but it says the black powder is made entirely with all the buckthorn charcoal with a heavy graphite glazing. Now, if you don't quite understand the difference between glazing and just tumbling it to knock down the rough edges on your gunpowder, go to your local donut shop and ask to see the difference between a glazed and a non-glazed donuts. Okay? Go to a ceramic shop and ask them to see how they glaze ceramic cups. Glazing always implies that there's a coating on top of it. So when Swiss says the black powder is made entirely with all the buckthorn charcoal with a heavy graphite glazing, that goes beyond just tumbling it in your tumbler to knock down the rough edges, because even though you may polish your gunpowder in a tumbler, that's not the same as glazing it with a protective coating. Okay? So please think before you leave comments that are kind of on the troll end of commenting. Okay? Because stuff like this is easy to debunk when you think about it. And there again, if you think that tumbling your black powder to knock off the rough edges is going to make your gunpowder shoot faster, I beg to differ, because there's no glazing. All you've done is polished it. That does not help with your gunpowder shooting faster. Okay? All you're doing is just polishing it so that it comes out of your powder horn a little bit easier than, say, perhaps mine does. But I have no problem with my gunpowder coming out of my horns, because my horns typically have a 1/4 inch hole. So I have no problem with my gunpowder coming out of the horn, even though it's got sharp edges on it. Alright, now that those comments are out of the way, the guessing game and the results. I want to start first by saying that all gunpowders that I tested in the guessing game were 80 grains by weight. 0.490 round ball and a 0.20 thousandths patch, and it was a spit patch. So in round 1 I gave the hint that the answer is in the specific gravity. Okay? So before we get into that, I want to address something else, because someone else said specific gravity's got nothing to do with making gunpowder. Well, actually it does. For those of you that are watching this that attended my seminar that I put on at the Santa Fe Trail Rendezvous in the Cache La Plew, you readily recognized with your own human eye that the gunpowder I made with the maple with a specific gravity of 0.63 burned slower than the other gunpowders that I compared it to. And many of you made that note. Not only that, at Cache La Plew, I had a clear jar and I put willow in it, then I put my junipers in it, then I put maple in it. and you could physically see how much heavier the charcoal was with the maple, with a specific gravity. Okay? And I want to thank Ed Hagar for pointing out the Santa Fe Trail Rendezvous that I should be explaining about specific gravity. And what specific gravity is when it comes to wood is it's measuring the density. And water has a gravity of 1.00. So you have your temperature, you have your block of wood, you put it in the water, and then you measure the buoyancy of the wood. It'll tell you how much or how heavy the wood is. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about when I get to specific gravity. Okay, now if you have willow with a specific gravity of 0.39, and say you have a 2x2 block, or you have a 2x2 block of Ipe, Brazilian walnut, with a specific gravity of 1.08, which one's going to float more? Oh, wait a minute. Since Ipe is heavier than water, it's going to sink. Now imagine making gunpowder out of Ipe with a specific gravity of 1.08. If you were to charcoal that and put it into a glass jar, you'd probably get something like this. Probably. Now imagine mixing that and making gunpowder with a 75 gram container of potassium nitrate. How much garbage do you think would be left behind in your barrel? About as much garbage that's left behind, say, like with a maple. And it's going to burn slow. And those two rendezvous that I mentioned could physically see a burn rate difference with the naked eye. Okay, so when you speak about, or when I speak about specific gravity, it does affect the burn rate. Slower or faster, cleaner or dirtier. Okay, and as I have shown time and time and time again on this channel through my jars, your specific gravity is or does relate to how much volume of charcoal that you're mixing with your potassium nitrate in your charcoal. Okay, and if specific gravity as it relates to volumes get nothing to do with making gunpowder or even making good powder, then ask yourself with the 75-15-10 formula why Swiss chooses to use buckthorn alder only with a specific gravity of 0.50. It's really no different, guys, than the internal combustion engine years ago when we had naturally aspirated engines, a carburetor engine. You always had, well, not always, but from time to time you have to tweak the jets on the carburetor, because if your engine started burning real rich, you could see the results on your spark plugs. They would foul out your spark plugs. Well, if you have too much potassium nitrate that's not consuming all of your charcoal, then you're going to see the results of that inside your barrel. Okay? So I'm going to give you the answer to the very first test I did. And the hint was, the answer is in the specific gravity. Okay? The first shots that I made was with the Willow 0.39 specific gravity. And this was pucked with an 1 5/16 die. The 5-shot group had an average of 1596.4 with a spread of 83. And from here on, I'm going to just do away with the spread because, in my opinion, those spreads are just irrelevant. They really are. Which one makes you more dead? That's my question. A greater spread or a lesser spread? Okay. Now, the next one was with maple. And that was made with a 2-inch pucking die. 5-shot average was 1619. Isn't it interesting? All those people telling me that I need to use a 1-inch die because the 2-inch pucking die doesn't get it as dense, but yet the maple had a greater velocity than the Willow made with an 1 5/16 pucking die. How does that fit into these equations? Inquiring minds want to know. Okay, now I will tell you that with the maple, I actually had to vent pick my flintlock twice. That's how much more dirtier it burnt, but it did produce more feet per second. Even though it was only 23 feet, 0.4 difference, there was a measurable difference, okay? So my question to you in this particular test is, with willow as a lighter charcoal and maple as a heavier charcoal pucked with a 2-inch die, why did the maple produce a heavier, or produce more velocity than the lighter weight charcoal of the willow? Well, look at it like this. If you have a slower burning charcoal, such as maple, which is heavier, you're going to be allowing those gases to build up more than a flash, such as willow. Those gases are going to build up. Even though you're in the gun barrel, we're talking nanoseconds, it still has a very measurable burn rate, okay? So I produced 23.4 more feet per second with the heavier charcoal, okay? Another way of looking at it like this: why does your 777 produce such higher pressures? Why does it produce more feet per second? Because it's a much slower burning gunpowder, allowing those gases to build up. If those gases build up too quick, you're not going to produce the higher feet per second. That's just common sense thinking right there, okay? And as I had just noted, I had to vent pick my flintlock a couple times with the maple, okay? So once again, when I compared those two gunpowders, even though the maple was made with a 2-inch pucking die, and I'm told I'm not getting it as dense as with a 1-inch or even an 1 5/16 inch at this point, the maple pucked with a 2-inch pucking die produced more feet per second, albeit once again 23. It did produce faster feet per second with the velocity. Now my question is, even to myself, which one of these makes you more dead? See, to me, that's irrelevant. So let's move on to round 2. And I gave the hint, these pressures are not all that great. Now, I had to throw out some numbers because in this particular round, I had one shot that was 1511, and then I had another shot that was 1591. So what I did is I threw out those numbers and I used a 4-shot number difference, only with the numbers that were 1600 or above, okay? So we have to understand that. So out of a 4-shot group, my first test was 1655.75 and my second round was 1667. It's only a difference of 15 feet per second in the velocity. It's not that big a deal, is it? 15 feet per second. But I will tell you this, in round 1, the juniper I shot was 1655. All those shots were made juniper using a 2-inch pucking die. The second round was the juniper I made with a 1-inch pucking die. Now I've explained before on this channel, with my 2-inch pucking die, the head of my pucking die is just right at 2 inches. My son-in-law rounded it off, so when I'm compressing, I'm using the full head space of the die to compress, and I'm only getting 15 feet per second different in the velocities. So those pressures were not all that great. Okay, so for me at least, in the way I make my gunpowder, the 15 feet per second, it's not worth changing from a 2-inch to a 1-inch pucking die, although I have done that. Okay, So for all of those people that were sending me all their data about a 2-inch pucking die and the density versus the 1-inch pucking die and the density, it's not worth 15 feet per second, at least from this side of the camera. Now, I will also note that I recovered all those patches from the gunpowder that I pucked with the 2-inch and the 1-inch, and all those patches were clean like my Juniper normally does. Burns clean. Now, round 3 was done with a question from a friend of mine, William, who lives in southern New Mexico here, who also makes his own homemade gunpowder. And the hint that I gave is this is supposed to help you produce pure or purer gunpowder. And this time I use a variety of water in the moistening up of the gunpowder before you puck it. Okay, so now I also want to note that in this particular test that all my gunpowders that I tested were made with a 2-inch pucking die, and they were all Juniper. Okay, now even though I only did 2 rounds, the 3rd round I had already done in a previous video with my Juniper made with a 2-inch pucking die. Okay, and in that first series of 5 shots I got an average of 1626. That particular gunpowder was pucked using my groundwater with all the minerals in it. Okay, now the first 5 shots done with city water got an average of 1662. And then the second test was with distilled water, and I got 1659. 3 feet per second different in velocity. 3 feet! Now I will acquiesce that using my groundwater did slow down the velocities from 1626, and then with the city water 1662, and the distilled water 1659. Okay, now with that being said, and as most of you have known and followed along, I have since gone to a 50% acetone and distilled water. Okay, because for the distilled water with a 3 feet per second difference is not worth my time and energy to mess with, to be honest with you. Okay. And your friends have to remember that I'm only using a 12-ton jack, and I'm sure that I could increase those velocities a little bit by going to a 20-ton jack, but here again, pucking with a 12-ton or a 20-ton jack, which one's going to make you more dead? See, to me, those things are completely irrelevant. Okay, now going on to round 4, and I didn't write them in my big book here. The question or the hint that I asked, to purify or not to purify. Now, if you've been following this channel, you will see that I took some factory Spectracide, KN03, that we were all told, don't use, it's garbage, it's dirty. I purified that, okay? So, what did I achieve? Once again, 80 grains by weight, but this time I was using aspen as the charcoal, and as I mentioned, and just to reiterate right here, aspen has a specific gravity of 0.45. So it's a pretty light-weighted charcoal compared to buckthorn alder at 0.50. Okay, but what did I get? Now these gunpowders that I tested were all done with a 1-inch pucking die, but aspen was the charcoal. Okay, so with the factory potassium nitrate, and I'm talking the factory, not stump remover, I got an average of 1,716 feet per second, With the stump remover that I purified, I got an average of 1689.6. What's that? A difference of 27 feet per second. So are you more dead at 1689 or less dead at 1716? But the interesting thing is I took an average of all 10 shots and I got an average of 1703. Guys, how you make your own gunpowder is entirely up to you. My advice to you is experiment yourself. Don't just watch this video or someone else's videos and come to an absolute conclusion. And I've mentioned before, as Paul Harrell states, not all chronographs agree temperature and elevation affects the readings you get. But my ultimate point in all of this is, what makes you more dead? Okay? And that's one of the reasons why, for me personally, I tend to think that chronographs do nothing but feed into the male ego. Yeah, it gives you a good baseline, but that's not an absolute. It's really not. You know, your guns are going to react different on a hot day when that barrel seems to, I don't know, maybe enlarge itself due to daytime temperatures, maybe excessive amounts of shooting. I was at a rendezvous here real recently where a flintlock shooter was complaining about warming up the barrel makes the gun more accurate. Well, there you go. In some people's minds, these things have an effect to your shooting ability. Okay? So anyhow, I'm going to leave all of that at this. You decide for yourself. I do have some more videos coming. I still have the video that I'm working on with the Swiss gunpowder, where I took 100 grams of Swiss, put it in my ball mill, broke it up, separated most of the graphite, and got it back down to the hopefully the 3 components. I'll see how that works when I get ready to shoot that through my chronograph, just to get a baseline. It's not going to be the end-all be-all to, you know, Swiss gunpowder, but I do have some buckthorn alder right now that I'm drying out to get that specific gravity down to about the 12%, because as I recently discovered, especially with buckthorn alder, they do get that down to a 12% moisture content, and then you get a 0.50 specific gravity. So I'm drying that right now. And thank you to my friend up in Colorado, Robert, who made me some percussion caps with a 3D printer. I don't know if you guys can see those, but I'm going to be charging these and see how these work. And I do have a bunch of homemade percussion caps that I've already charged. I just need to get out and do the shooting when I get some time. I got a lot of other things going on right now, and I have another video in progress with the buckthorn alder. I'm going to show all of that, and in the mix of all of this, I'm going to be showing some filler material from the Cache La Plew Mountain Man Rendezvous. So don't be so quick to skip through, because you're going to see some interesting shots, some interesting misses, and some interesting things as it relates to the Cache La Plew Mountain Man Rendezvous. And it'll kind of give you a sense of what we go through when we do that particular rendezvous, and in particular with the steel targets, because over the years, the tree limbs have been allowed to grow. Nobody's clearing the tree limbs, so when you got to shoot at some of those targets, you've got to shoot through the trees. And that's either a miss or a hit. So anyhow, thanks for watching this. To my longtime friend Jonathan, I will be doing that video for you real soon regarding my stove here, and give you the measurements, and you can kind of see how everything works when it comes to an alcohol burner. I'm going to be doing that real soon. So anyhow, friends, thanks for watching, and I hope everybody will have a great day. And remember, drink your coffee when it's hot. Bye.